I was browsing Amazon and I wanted to do some research. What are the best-selling lenses on this entire website? And I found that out pretty quickly, and here they are all laid out in front of me. And what you'll notice right away is they're all compact. All but one are APS-C lenses. And in fact, I own 4 out of the 5 lenses here. And what I want to do in this video is walk through each of these lenses, offer some alternatives that may be better in some situations, and discuss. So let's begin. Lens number 1, that is the best-selling E-mount lens on Amazon with over 400 purchases in the last 30 days, is the only full-frame lens on this list. It is the Sony FE 50 f1.8. This is a real surprise because according to the vast majority of gear gurus, this lens is garbage. There are a lot of negative reviews out there. Most of it boils down to the autofocus hunting a lot, being loud, slow, unreliable. But there are a lot of reasons why this is a best-selling lens. First, it's very inexpensive. This is one of the cheapest full-frame lenses out on the market. If you are brand new to full-frame, you likely have the kit lens, and you're probably exploring the world of faster prime lenses. This is a cheap way to get into that. Sony has a 50mm f1.2 that costs nearly $2,000, whereas this is 10% of that price. Second, it is a 50mm, which according to a lot of sources is the most popular fixed focal length on full frame. It's a great portrait length lens, but versatile enough for street work, more so than an 85mm at least. Third, optically, it's okay. I'm not going to say that this is better than the dozen, in fact, probably 100 other options as far as 50mm out of the market. But what I will say is that to the casual viewer, if you were to compare images coming out of this versus, let's say, the G Master 50 f1.2, most people that are not photographers, that are not professionals, will not notice much, if any, difference. And I think that's what it comes down to. Now, should Sony update this lens? Absolutely. But will they? Well, that's kind of a tough call because I feel like they're enjoying the fruit of just harvesting lots of money from people buying the 50 f1.4, the 50 f1.2, that are much more expensive lenses than this one, and maybe that's why they've been selling this lens unchanged for almost a decade. As for alternatives, this lens is kind of in a class on its own. There are a lot of options in the 50mm focal range, but the majority of the cheap ones are manual focus lenses. When you look at the autofocus ones, most are more expensive in the $300 to $400 range from third-party lens manufacturers, and the cheaper options such as the Makey 50mm are significantly larger and unfortunately are not better in terms of autofocus. So there is a significant value still with this Sony 50mm, even though it is quite an old lens. The rest of the lenses on this list are all APS-C. Now the first one coming in at number 2 most popular bestseller on Amazon is this Sigma 18 to 50 f2.8 zoom. And this one is selling over 400 units in the last month. And I can't say enough positive stuff about it. If you can only afford to buy one lens for your APS-C camera, this is the most versatile, the most cost-effective solution. It gives you a great zoom range, a constant f2.8 aperture, so much better subject separation and low light performance than the kit lens, and it's small and lightweight. Since I use this lens so frequently for video, I have an ND filter that lives on the end of it, as you can see here. This is a very affordable, compact variable ND filter from K&F Concept, and I will have that link down in the description below. For about $20, $25, it is well worth the money. I did a 3-way comparison between this lens and 2 other competitors, the Sony 16 to 55 and the Tamron 17 to 70. Optically, there's almost no difference between them, but if I were to summarize, the Sony is clinically the best lens in terms of performance. The Tamron is a very solid choice because it's the only one with optical stabilization. So if you have an APS-C camera without in-body image stabilization, such as the A6000 or the A6400, that's a huge deal. The Sigma is the smallest in size and the lowest cost option, and one of my favorite things about the Sigma is its close focus ability. I own both the Sigma and the Sony, but I tend to use the Sigma more often. Next on the list, coming in number 3 in terms of bestsellers, is another kind of surprise. The Sony 55 to 210. This is an f4.5 to 6.3 OSS telephoto for APS-C. And I guess this should not be a surprise because telephoto lenses are very popular and they tend to be a little bit on the pricier side. This is a very easy, very inexpensive way of getting into telephoto. This lens, which is selling for $180 US as a renewed model, is a very cheap way of getting that reach that you want on an APS-C camera for the lowest investment possible. And you can see that over 300 of these have been sold in the last 30 days. I did a video about the 55-210 years ago with a cringy skit with my wife, so if you are interested in more about it, watch that one. But optically, its average autofocus is good enough, and the size is, as you can see, quite compact. The biggest compromise is how dark this lens gets as you zoom in, going from f4.5, which is already dark, down to 6.3, which is, yes. Now for outdoor use in the sun, it's fine, you'll be happy, but in lower light situations, it might be tough to use a lens at f6.3, especially if you are trying to freeze action. This is another lens that I wish that Sony would update with modern elements and a modern focusing motor, and just upgrade it overall. This is an old lens that came out like back around the A6000 days, so I'm guessing about 10 years or so. Now the real genius of this lens is that it's an OSS, or optical steady shot lens, which means it is stabilized. And so if you have a camera such as that A6000, A64, A63, all of those bodies, everything but the premium level of those bodies that had IBIS, this is kind of a rare thing. There's not very many telephoto lenses out there that still have OSS, and certainly not at this price point and in this compact size. So it makes sense why it sells as much as it does. The next level up from this in Sony's lineup would be the 70-350mm f4.5 to 6.3, which is a great lens, but $900 when it's on sale, and it's still just as dark when you zoom in. Another option to consider is something like the Tamron 18-300mm for APS-C, because it's less money, it still has stabilization, and it can replace a walk-around lens as well as a telephoto lens on an APS-C setup. Number 4 on the list is a member of the Sigma quartet of lenses. This is the 30mm f1.4, and this one sells over 300 times in the last 30 days. This is the first lens in the Sigma Prime lineup of f1.4 super bright compact lenses, which is now again a group of 4, and they are all excellent. This 30mm is the oldest and the one that is optically the most compromised, but 30mm on APS-C gives you a 45mm full frame equivalent, making it almost the nifty 50 of the APS-C world. I've noticed that the price on this lens fluctuates a lot, so keep an eye on it. I'll link it down in the description because it's possible to save quite a bit on this one. Right now it's showing just under $300 US for a new one. Now as far as recommendations, there are a lot of other options in this focal range, but by far my favorite is the Viltrox 27mm f1.2. It's bigger, it's heavier, it's nearly double the price, but the build and the rendering of that lens is on another level. I also have to mention the Sony 35mm f1.8, which is a lens that I used for years when I just started out with APS-C cameras, and I do miss that one. It's just barely softer than the Sigma, but it's still a brilliant little performer, and it has optical stabilization built in, which is something that isn't in the Sigma. Last up on the list is this. This is the Sigma 16mm f1.4, so another member of the quartet. And what is interesting about this one is that it sells over 200 times in the last 30 days, but if you look at the reviews, this thing has over 5,300 reviews, by far way more than any of the other lenses on this list. And it just confirms my theory, which is I think that the Sigma 16mm f1.4 is the best-selling Sony E-mount lens of all time. This one is immensely popular and for very good reason. I own a lot of lenses, but I still use this one all the time. If I were to pick a single prime lens to take with me anywhere, this would be it. It is the equivalent of a 24mm on a full-frame camera. This is f1.4, so you get unbelievable subject separation, clean, soft bokeh, great colors, sharpness that is unbeatable, excellent autofocus, all in a well-built package. You can't go wrong, and I've gotten dozens, if not hundreds of DMs from people thanking me for recommending this lens to them. I've never once gotten a complaint about it. This lens is so good and so well received that a few years ago Sony had to come out with a 15mm f1.4 for APS-C, but of course they priced it at double this one. Since then prices are down, it's about $650 today, but I still think that the cheaper Sigma is still the better choice. Performance is so close that there's no reason to spend that extra $200 $250 on the Sony. So that is it for this top 5 bestseller list. Let me know down in the comments what you guys thought about this list and if you were surprised by any of them. Also, let me know if you own any of these lenses. I'm sure a lot of you do. I own 4 of these. Again, I had to rent this full frame 50mm, but the rest of these are my own. And so it makes sense. If I've tested literally hundreds of lenses on this channel and I've kept these 4, there's probably a good reason for it. I'll have a link to all of these lenses down in the description and in the comments, so if you are looking at pricing or shopping sales, then check those out below. Thank you guys so much for your support. Stay tuned for more. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.